Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 263 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and a two-time author. Our second book is called From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing. So go and pick up that book on Amazon today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there's nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I've actually been called the mayor many times because of my ability to bridge the gap between two opposite sides of the aisle and be a recognizable face for the advancement, in my case, of the fraternal movement. In listening to this interview that you're going to hear right now, I want you to think about how you can bridge that gap on your campus, in your community, and work together with various people and various opinions for the betterment of your campus and the fraternal movement. Our next guest is Debbie Peterson. Debbie was the mayor of her city for 2 years after serving for 4 years as a city council member and 4 years before that as a planning commissioner and commissioner chair. The two things that her town needed the most were, number one, income, and number two, a better image. So what she had built a successful manufacturing business with the same number of employees and income as the city, that works. And now she has a degree in public relations, so she felt that she can make a difference in her city's well-being. Now, little did she know how much her understanding of boards, balance sheets, budgets, cash flow, company culture, communication, and redevelopment would matter. And that's why it's so important, the education that you're getting on a college campus, because you just don't know where you're going to need all of these tools. And as a planning commissioner, everything ran very smoothly, as a good commission should. For Debbie, when she was elected to the city council, she began to hear from citizens who had troubled stories of corruption, and they wanted her to fix it. By the time she was elected as mayor in 2012, she knew for sure that many of the agencies in her county were not run professionally and did not observe best practices. It was when she became mayor that she began to be able to connect all the dots between poorly run agencies, obscure and confusing government practices, dysfunctional boards, and missing money. That was also when she was able to make some of those changes. And she didn't do it alone. It was an effort by hundreds of widely diverse citizens who saw problems and stepped up to say something. I can't wait for you to hear this story. Welcome to the show, Debbie Peterson.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. Wow, what an introduction, and what a great thing you're doing with your podcast all together.
Thank you very much. I tell you, it's a passion of mine. It's something I care deeply about, and it's something I wish that I had when I was a college student, to understand some of these things and how, what we're learning on a college campus is going to help me beyond the walls of the college, right? How do I apply all of this knowledge in the real world, and what does the real world even look like? There's some things you just can't get from a textbook, right?
That's absolutely right. And the real world scared me to death, because that's what I kept hearing about. And yet I still use a lot of the wisdom that I got from advisors when I was in college. It made a big difference for the rest of my life.
I agree completely. Now, speaking of college, you decided on the University of Idaho for your undergraduate experience. Now, I've spoken on that campus many times. The students are absolutely amazing. What made you choose Idaho of all places?
Well, I know from California, I don't think I even knew where Idaho was at that point. I was thinking, well, maybe it's by Iowa or Ohio, Idaho. But in the end, I was looking for a small town. My parents had gone to school in a small town in Kansas, and they just loved that small town experience. And I was looking for that, and it was nowhere in California. So I'd kind of given up on it. And then I had a friend who was up there, and I went to visit, and it was everything I had hoped for. So I just really wanted the community that you get in a small town.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. So what's your advice to college students who are listening right now that might be terrified about the thought of growing up and having a career after graduation?
It still scares me to think about it. I remember one day when I was 19, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I just it wasn't a panic attack, but it was a lot of fear about having to have a career. And I didn't want to grow up. I wasn't ready to grow up. And so it wouldn't go away. the feeling wouldn't go away. So finally, the next day, I called my mother and I just told her that Mom, I'm scared to grow up, and I don't want to have a career. I'm scared to have a career. I don't know what that means. And she just said, you know, honey, I still don't feel like I'm grown up. And you can have lots of careers in your life. You didn't have to pick just one career. And after that, all the fears really eased off. I was still afraid of, as you said, living in the real world, but it didn't have the same power over me when my mother said both of those things. You don't have to grow up, and you'll have many careers in your lifetime.
Yeah, that's
And in the
really,
end, I did. In the end, it worked out wonderfully. I'm on my 4th career now, and well, I think this is going to be my last one, who knows? But I started out as an entrepreneur. I set up a small company in Great Britain, and that was extremely successful. And then I moved back to California and teamed up with my mother as a real estate broker, and also concurrently started my work with the city council, and then had always wanted to write. And that was another thing I was afraid to do. I started out in journalism and I just didn't know if I could produce every day. And so I moved to PR because it was more broadly based. And I'm writing. And now I have a book that's a bestseller. So I didn't need to be afraid at any of those times. It all worked out fine.
it did. And it's going to work out for our listeners too. They just don't know it yet, right? So, I mean, I guess my question is, you were the mayor of Grover Beach, California for 2 years, and you were actually the first directly elected female mayor. And so that's amazing. You know, you add that on top of your time as city council member and planning
Mhm.
commissioner and commission chair. So
Yeah.
what drew you to public service of all
It really was neighbors asking me to do it. And it was a desire to do the Ben Franklin thing, which at the Constitutional Convention, he wrote an amazing speech in June 1787 or 1777. No, it was 87. And he basically said that we're in a post of honor that shouldn't be a place of profit, but it should be a post of honor. And his concept was that we go to serve our community for a period of time, and then we go back and work again in our community. And I really love that concept of basically neighbors coming in to take care of the business of the people. And so I wanted to do that. I decided it was time to do my public service,
Yeah.
basically.
That makes total sense. You then wrote the book, The Happiest Corruption, Sleaze, Lies, and Suicide in a California Beach Town, which is a true crime story. And it shows how local government corruption happens, how you can spot it, and how you can fix it. So if our listeners see some local government corruption in their town, what should they do?
Well, first of all, I think if you do start with the concept of service, that you're going in to do service, and in order to do that, you have to participate, you have to go to the meetings, you have to read the agenda packets. And once you do that, when you know what's going on, you understand what's going on, then you might be in a position to judge whether it's corruption or not. But it's very easy to call something corruption simply because you don't understand it. And so the first thing to do is to investigate it and figure out, is it really corruption? Do your homework, do your research, go to the website, even talk to your council members and talk to other community members. And if you then know it to be corruption, you should really, if you can, validate that. And you can do that using a public records request. And I do have a really good public records request form on my website at debbiepeterson.com, and that can be downloaded. And I also have a podcast that explains how to complete a public records request. And that's also on the website, debbiepeterson.com. And you would do a public records request, hopefully get the records you're looking for. And then if you really do have something that you can verify and you validated, then you can go to your police department. If you don't get help there, go to the district attorney. If you don't get help there, go to the FBI or go to your state attorney general. And just keep going up the line until somebody listens to you, pays attention, and does something about it. And the other thing is, usually you need a lot of other people who agree with you and care about it, because generally they don't listen to one person, even if that one person is a mayor. I wrote to every single agency and basically was ignored or told, oh yes, dear, that's nice. Send us some evidence. Oh, but we don't want any evidence. I got the two in one letter. So it takes a lot of people, to get their attention sometimes.
Well, you have a concrete plan on how to do it. You just laid it out for our listeners. So hopefully they'll go to your website, get that public, data, and then see where they go from there. I mean, it's hard to say without getting all of the information and the records. But yeah, that sounds like a good plan. I also know that you have some thoughts on cannabis. I'm seeing a lot of states legalize cannabis for various reasons. And so we're starting to see a big change here in the country. But how do you think cannabis actually corrupted some of the local politicians in town?
It wasn't the cannabis that corrupted them. And I have no beef with cannabis. My beef is with corruption. And but what it was the incredible amount of money that attracted and corrupted them. It's like a gold rush,
Mm-hmm.
only it's a green rush, and in more ways than one, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were so attracted that, there were players who were still playing in the black market and playing in the legal market, and it was those players who bribed city council members. And if you've got folks who've been elected who are bribable, who are corruptible, and you've got people doing something where there's a lot of money involved and they're willing to throw money at whoever they need to throw money at, you end up with a corrupt system.
Mm-hmm. One of the other things we should talk about is politics, because right now politics seems totally gridlocked all along party lines. You don't see a lot of collaboration reaching across the aisle. That's like something that happened, 30, 40 years ago, but today it never happens almost. So what is the one American value that unites us all as citizens, regardless of our race, religion, or politics?
In every single case where I've looked at how people have fought corruption and they've worked together at local government level, in every single case, people have become passionate about things that have nothing to do with your party, because local politics and the things that need to be done locally are really have nothing to do with party. They just have to do with what's best in your community. And so it really is that desire for honest government. And what really warms my heart, and I'm of the same opinion as you, that we have to reach across the aisle. And in fact, you know what? There isn't an aisle. That's an artificial construct. There's no aisle. We're all the same community. We're all the same country. We're all Americans. We're all US citizens. And so there's no aisle. It's all up here.
Yeah,
That
I
aisle
wish we can
business.
get back to those days where we can work together on
Yeah.
solving common problems. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, it's a problem for both of us. So
Yeah,
what are
it
we
is.
going to do about
Yeah.
it? Are we going to work together to fix it? Or are we just not going to talk to each other? Because
Right.
not talking to each other is not getting us very far.
Yeah, you don't face it, you can't fix it. And if you don't understand what it is that's bothering people or where they're coming from, then you can't work together to come up with solutions. It's a lose-lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to government by the people? I mean, it seems that there are so many things that the US citizens, for example, are overwhelmingly in favor of. And I'll give an example, maybe a better background check on people buying guns. So, but that doesn't seem to have any impact whatsoever on politicians or their actions. So what's going on? Is government by the people still a thing?
I'm going to say yes, it is. And it is if you're doing it at the local level. A lot of these folks who go up to higher levels of government start at the local level. If we are testing people at the local level to find out if they're truly going to represent us, if they have integrity, if they represent the values that are important in our community, then we'll be sending better people up the line. And it's more than voting. It's more than marching. It's more than campaigning. It's about going to those meetings, knowing what's going on and watching them after you elect them. And the place to test that's at the local level. And then if they're good, send them up the line and bring in some more good ones at the local level. But you have to act with your feet. It's not just those other things. Marching even isn't it. You have to go to the meetings, pay attention, review the packets. It's really about getting involved at the local level, because it's a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and it depends on the people paying attention, and we aren't paying attention in the right ways.
Yeah, I see that. I think we should talk about women in politics. Speaking of sending the right people up the line, let's talk a little bit more about women that are often overlooked in terms of their role in politics.
Historically, women didn't get the vote. Women of any color, Black men got the vote in the late 1700s. It was 1800s. It was 50 years later before any women got the vote. But they were still really active. And it was the women who made sure that we had the public policies that protected women, children, widows, and actually took out the corrupt machines that were in the cities and still exist in some places. But it was the women making sure that those things were covered. And right now in America, we represent 30% of the elected representatives, but we're 51% of the population. And if we're looking at numbers across the world, we are the 74th nation in terms of having representation by women. We are not doing well. And women they bring something different to the table. But if we really want to have balance in our government and our communities, we do need that diversity of women also.
Yep, diversity is so critical to any organization, whether we're talking about, politicians, whether we're talking about a business. There's some things that I can't see. And so I depend on my diverse team, including women, to tell me the things that I can't see. And I think that's such a basic construct, but for some reason people don't get it. And we're certainly not electing women like we should be, because I think if we had that, I think we'd be better off. We'd be able to spot things we can't see. We'd be able to make better decisions and faster decisions. But
that I'm going to interrupt you, because that is the hugely important thing. It's the diversity, and it's not just diversity of gender or race or nationality. It's diversity of opinion. And that's what we were talking about earlier. And that's what democracy is about. It's about being able to have spirited discourse, spirited conversations, bringing our points of view and allowing one another to express them, and allowing one another to feel differently, and allowing there to be a vote. Majority rules, but the minority is protected and still represented. Our representatives, we don't, if you represent a city council member, you're not representing them as a Democrat or a Republican, and then they only represent the Democrats and Republicans in your city. They're there to represent the whole city. And the other diversity that is, I'm going to say, almost always overlooked, almost than any other, is young people. And we had a young council member who started out when he was in college, and this is in the city of San Luis Obispo. It was Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. He's the one who introduced the first transparency laws in the state, and he introduced them in Cal Poly. He was young, and that youth brought this exuberance and excitement that is critical. He's the one who made us the first town in the United States that outlawed smoking in public places. And now we're all thankful for that. And he's the one who suggested that we oppose the Vietnam War. Now, we've all learned that we need to be supportive of, sympathetic, and grateful for our veterans. And so that is not such a politically correct stance now, but he was way out ahead of even Cal Berkeley. We were the first. And that's because we had a young person on the council, and and he stayed involved for the rest of his life. And that's where it needs to start. It needs to start when folks are in college, understanding this. Our country will be better, and their country will be better if we can do that.
Yeah, what a great experience for a college student to be able to run for council. They certainly have a lot of other college students that can go and vote for them. So they have that mass of people,
yes.
Especially if you're in a fraternity or sorority, you definitely have it. And so, I agree with you. I think more college students who are listening right now should be running for their local city council, and, change the laws, make them better for college students. I hear college students complaining all the time about local zoning laws, for example. They want a fraternity house in a particular area, but they can't because there's all these local zoning. So run for council and change it if you believe it's what's best for the community. But I don't know that they're thinking that way.
Yeah, and the other thing they can do, and I usually say to people to do it this way. I was giving an extreme example. Ask if you can ask to be appointed to the Parks and Recreation Commission, ask to be appointed to the Planning Commission. You can start at the bottom and work your way up. And by the time you get further up, you will be really, really well informed, and you'll understand how it all works. And that's the only reason I could identify the corruption I did was, well, it was my business background, and it was that people were coming to me, but really it was because I'd been in the system for long enough to be able to connect the dots. Had I started as mayor or started as a council member, I wouldn't have had the background to do it.
Yeah, that
So
makes total sense.
there's nothing wrong with starting in other ways, volunteering in your community, even for your city government.
I hope that the students listening now are just being inspired to go out and run for city council because boy, oh
Me
boy, what a great
too.
experience. What a resume builder to say that you served on your city council, right?
Or
Um,
even that you ran. What an experience to run.
yeah,
You don't win every time. You maybe win half the time, but that's okay. You
yeah.
learn a lot in the process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been so fantastic, so uplifting. And I know you're in the San Luis Obispo area, and I actually do get there quite often. I know there's a college there in town. So, what's the good food in town? Where should I go for a great meal the next time I'm in San Luis Obispo?
Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit because I live about 12 miles south, same county, but in a different town. So I'm going to suggest that you come to Grover Beach, California. Just drive 12 miles south on the 101
Mhm.
and you go to Jimmy's. Jimmy's on 13th and Grand is a very local restaurant. They have Italian food, the kind of traditional, really good stuff that we had when I was a kid. And you'll see all the locals there. You'll feel like you are in a small town. And if you want to spend more money and you want the best food I've ever had anywhere in the world, you can go down the street into Arroyo Grande and you can eat at, oh gosh, I'm losing the name of it, Ember. And Ember is just simply amazing, but you might need a reservation to eat at Ember. But go to either one of those and you'll have a lovely experience. You'll see locals at Ember as well. Lots of locals go there too.
That's what I like. I like to eat where the locals eat because I know they know good food. They're not settling for a tourist trap. They know that the person in the kitchen is making something that's absolutely out of this world. So Ember sounds like the perfect spot for me. So I'll definitely have to go and check that out. That sounds awesome. So if our student listeners, if they want to connect with you, if they want to buy your book, if they want to invite you to speak on their college campus, where should they go?
Everything you need to find is going to be at debbiepeterson.com, DebbiePeterson, debbiepeterson.com. The book is available on Amazon. You can get it as an ebook or a paperback. Before too long, I'll have it out in audio as well.
That's fantastic. The book is called The Happiest Corruption, Sleaze, Lies, and Suicide in a California Beach Town. I mean, talk about a book that sounds like something you need to read right away.
That's what
I
it looks
mean,
like.
that looks awesome. That looks absolutely incredible. Well, congratulations on all the success for your book, all of your accomplishments up to this point. I think, your mentorship for young people is going to be so important because you literally can change what what your city, what your town is doing. And if you see things that are wrong, just stand up to it.
Go
If you
get
see
it.
corruption, that's your job to step in and do something, because if you're not going to ring the bell, who is?
That's right. That's right. And I have such high hopes. I'm thrilled with what I see coming from young people. I'm not one of these ones who says, oh, the world's going to pot. I'm thrilled with what I see in young people. So go for it. Make it yours. You own it. It
Yeah.
belongs to you.
Me too. I get all of this talk from other people when they know that I work with college students every day. They're like, oh, they're so lazy. They're all this and that. And I'm like, no.
They're
I'm
not.
like, you're not talking about the same college students I work with, because the ones I
Uh-uh.
work with, Gen Z, they are the most driven generation that I've ever seen. And they want to make the world a better place. I mean, that is really what they want. They want good jobs too. So they're very keyed into their careers, but ultimately they want to partner with their employer to make the world a better place. And if you can do that, then you're dialed into Gen Z and they will do amazing things for you. I promise.
Wonderful. That's
Thanks so
great.
much. Yeah, thanks so much for being with us today. This has been just absolutely fantastic. I'm so glad we had the opportunity to sit down and you could share your wisdom with our listeners. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this talk with Debbie, please go and pick up her book. Please like this interview. Please share it with other college students that might be interested in, becoming city council or whatever. Get people involved, listen to Debbie's words, read her book. And if you can go out and execute and be involved in your local politics, you can do absolutely anything. It'll be a great experience for you. Win or lose, you will have a great experience. So thank you so much for your time, Debbie. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's really, really nice to see you again.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us. We hope to see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.